Hey, what's party? Welcome back to News Dose, and Xbox's 2026 lineup continues to leak out. Yeah, last week we talked about Forza Horizon 6 and what seems to be an earlier than expected launch, but now we're also hearing about one of their new IP and how it could release next year on top of that. I mean, if anything else, 2026 seems to be every bit as big as they're hyping it up to be, and I'm going to explain why here in just a bit. And also, based on what we're hearing, Sony, or at least this is what some fans believes right now, might be set to make a big announcement sometime soon. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with Valve's new Steam machine. I mean, the idea of a first-party Steam console is really exciting on paper. For anybody who missed the boat for the Steam Deck, well, you know, the Steam Store, Linux, and the Steam OS combined are pretty incredible, and a lot of people have been asking for that to be packed into a home console-like experience. So it has a lot of potential to break new ground for the Steam PC market, but Valve's one hurdle really comes down to its price. I mean, if it were to come out at, let's say, $1,000, then yeah, I think that would deflate hype that it would potentially have. However, Linus Tech Tips put out a prediction of what they think that it will cost by comparing it to comparable computer parts, and they came away with the conclusion that it will cost roughly $700. Now, I think some people are going to hear that, and their immediate reaction is going to be, well, that's just too expensive, considering the PlayStation 5 costs $550. However, I will say that there are other things to keep in mind, such as online gaming and what that costs to play on Steam compared to paying for something like PlayStation Plus. And well, multiplayer is free on PC, no subscriptions required. And that alone brings the prices much closer to one another than what that out-of-the-box price might first suggest. Now, there's also the fact that Steam is well known for having great discounts pretty much year-round. You know, they have the New Year sale, they have a spring sale, a summer sale, Black Friday, a winter sale, and you name it, they probably have it. So all in all, if it actually releases for $700, I think that's actually a fairly good price when you start to consider everything all together. Now, some of that also depends on if they actually include a controller, because that could increase the price if they don't, but we'll see. They're still sitting on that information for the time being, but hopefully they'll have news for us here in the coming weeks. Now, we also got an update for the ModRetro M64. As we talked about last week, Palmer Luckey previously teased a Black Friday announcement, and even though, unfortunately, they didn't include a launch date or pre-orders, they did, however, reveal multiple colors. You can see them here, which includes a translucent purple, green, and white to fit that 90s aesthetic. I mean, back in the day, Nintendo loved their translucent colors, but here's the cool thing. Even if you don't like one of these three colors that they're showing here, they also revealed that they have 12 different colors in development, and they're all easily swappable. So that's pretty cool, but at the end of the day, this console is ultimately going to be judged by how well it performs. And to me, this announcement reads as if they are trying to both cash in on the Analog 3D launch hype as well as some of its disappointment. The fact of the matter is that even though the Analog 3D is a great FPGA Nintendo 64 console, it's still sold out. So I think the ModRetro M64 can fill the void for a lot of people who missed out on the Analog 3D. Hopefully, it will be more readily available. And I think that's what they're currently banking on by making this announcement now, just off the cusp of the Analog 3D launch. So I think that's maybe why the pre-orders aren't quite ready yet. I think they were just trying to get this announcement out the door. But just for Nintendo 64 games, I'd still like to know a lot more than just its colors. Oh, and it looks like a new Dead Rising could possibly be on the way, or at least according to MP First and their sources. Yeah, I know there's some big-time Dead Rising fans out there, and the thing is that a lot of the love for this series really comes from the original, because it was just such a beloved game back during the PS360 era. And I say that because I think last year's Deluxe Remaster may have actually been a precursor for what's to come next. Yeah, Check this out. MP First said that according to our sources, this new Dead Rising installment has been in development since at least 2023 under the codename Wreck, and will feature the return of the beloved protagonist, Frank West. This is particularly relevant as all signs point to the game being a direct sequel to the first title. However, we have not been able to confirm this latter detail officially, so you may want to take it with a grain of salt. And that's always important to keep in mind. Really, with any kind of rumor, you should always take it with a grain of salt until proven true. But the idea of this game is pretty fun on paper. They also said that the title's main villain will be an extravagant and deranged film director who forces Frank and other survivors into various trials, all in the pursuit of filming his perfect movie. And I think that just sounds like an incredibly fun idea for a sequel to the first game. And that's really what these games are all about. They're fun and they're humorous in how they play. And I think the idea of filming a quote-unquote perfect movie all while evading zombies is very Dead Rising-esque in personality. And plus, a sequel to the first game I think makes a lot of sense coming off of the Dead Rising Deluxe remaster. I mean, maybe that remaster was their way of rebooting the series to then move on to the sequel, which will also have Frank West. I mean, you have to kind of realize that it's been, like 20 years since the first game, so that remaster could have been their way to reintroduce Frank West to new fans who may have missed out on the original title. Now, if any of this is true, though, I do kind of wonder if they'll announce it at, let's say, the Game Awards. But my thing about that is that they claimed it's only been in development since 2023. That's not really a very long time, so my guess, and this is only a guess, but my guess is that it's still probably a ways out based on the information that we currently have. So, hypothetically, even if they do announce it at the Game Awards, I wouldn't expect anything more than just a simple teaser. Alright, now let's just go and talk about Xbox, because 2026 legitimately is starting to shape up as Xbox's biggest year ever in terms of their first-party games. Now, to be completely fair, Xbox has massively grown beyond just their Xbox branded studios. They're now Xbox, Bethesda, Activision, Blizzard, wrapped all into one. But I think that's a part of why their 2026 lineup sounds very impressive for longtime Xbox fans, because today we are mainly talking about Xbox studio games specifically. See, the thing is that 2026 is Xbox's 25th anniversary, and by all indication, they have some very special plans for their longtime fans. Phil Spencer already suggested that Halo, Gears, Fable, and Forza will all have new games set for 2026, more than likely being Halo Campaign Evolved, Gears of War E-Day, Fable 4, and Forza Horizon 6. Now, last week we heard that Forza Horizon 6 is planned for an early 2026 launch. Its rumored release is allegedly within the first half of the year, and I think that would be an incredible way to start the year, if true. In fact, I think it could potentially be their best-selling game of 2026. But if all of those 4 games actually come to fruition in 2026, that's already an incredible lineup on its own. However, that's the thing, because now we're also hearing about another game that could potentially be planned for 2026. And this is a new IP, a new RPG that a lot of fans have been very excited about. And I'd say for good reason. This is inXile's new game, which is really their biggest game ever, being Clockwork Revolution. Now, for those that don't know, inXile is a legendary RPG studio because they've had some longtime talent that's worked on games like the original Fallout, Neverwinter, Planescape Torment, and of course, the Wasteland series being their spiritual successor to Fallout. So with all of that, there's been some hype around the idea of them working on an even bigger RPG. And well, if anything, they got their chance. They took the budget that Xbox afforded them after the acquisition, and now we're going to see what they're fully made of. Clockwork Revolution not only seems to be highly ambitious, but it also seems to be highly inspired by both Fallout and BioShock Infinite. I mean, that's definitely a cool combination, if anything else, but here's the cool part. It was just discovered that a former narrative designer at inXile listed Clockwork Revolution as a 2026 title on their LinkedIn profile. Now, admittedly, these profiles can be wrong. We've seen that happen in the past. But a lot of times they're also fairly accurate. And I mean, I will say, they have shown a lot of this specific game. Clockwork Revolution has already received a significant gameplay reveal, and that tells me that its launch might not be too far off. If not 2026, maybe early 2027 at the latest. But I think right now, especially with this news, 2026 could be a legitimate launch window for Clockwork Revolution. Like I said before, though, their 2026 lineup really might be Xbox's biggest year ever if all of these games actually comes to fruition. Now, if they do, though, one place that they could announce these games is at the Xbox Developer Direct. They do typically like to use that January month for their Xbox Directs, so it might not be that long before we start to get official announcements for all of these different games that'll come in 2026. Now, one more thing before we go, though, because fans are going crazy over the latest tease for the Game Awards. Apparently, this mysterious statue was discovered in a desert after players decoded a set of coordinates from Jeff Keighley. So now everybody's just trying to figure out what exactly this is supposed to be teasing, and theories are just all over the place. Most of the guesses seems to be for Diablo, God of War, The Elder Scrolls, or maybe even potentially Half-Life 3, with most people leaning towards Diablo or God of War. Now, the thing about Diablo, though, is that Jez Corden claimed that it was for a Diablo 4 expansion, but Jason Schreier quickly shot that down. He said that's not the case in this situation. And with that information, I mean, just based on how this statue looks, it kind of reminds me the most of God of War. However, Cory Barlog in a chat said that it's not God of War related, so, I mean, I really have no idea what this is supposed to be. I like to think it's for Half-Life 3, but that's probably me just dreaming. What I'll say, though, is that no matter what it is, I'm not going in with any kind of expectation because I've just been burned by too many Jeff Keighley showcases by this point. So even though this tease is pretty cool in how they're doing it, I'm still proceeding with caution. But let me know what you think. What do you think they're teasing with this statue? Let me hear it in the comments below. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.